jokes like this.
I don't want to say we've turned into BBC local radio, but what's your favourite biscuit? How do penguins get around on a bicycle? Bicycle.
Yeah. They're not getting any better, are they?
They're almost as bad as Robert Hicks's jokes.
Can he sue you for that?
No, but I'd probably agree, yeah. It's terrible dad jokes.
Welcome to the programme back. I think we're late because people have already said, what are you on yet? It's been busy.
Have we? Oh, yeah.
Tim says, more late kickoffs than Sky. That's a bit harsh.
Well, we're like 5 minutes, we're only 4 minutes.
I've been on the Super League hit flask.
I think it's safe to say that whether it's on Sky or not, I don't remember a game that's ever kicked off on time.
Well done to Harry Smith, who now will never be interviewed after a game again, with his first line to John Wilkin. I don't think we can say the word. It wasn't even a bad word. But
was he knackered?
They got a bollocking at half time.
Oh, you can get away with that. That's...
Give him a bit of a bollocking. So that was good. Should we start with the challenge? Hello, welcome. 4020 live. Bank holiday next week. What's going on there?
Well, we haven't had one for 2 weeks.
There's got another queen or something. What's going on? And Liz is casting aspersions over the attendance figures announced by clubs. It's a good. Don't start with the libel.
Is that because it's a shared gate?
Where was Liz and where did she think?
Well, I'm not casting aspersions. That's wrong. But saying Hawkins and Rose are not announcing attendance figures. Mm-hmm. So how do Batley know they're not being ripped off?
I think there'll be agreement between the clubs.
4 people here. Welcome to the programme. They've changed YouTube, which is slightly annoying, but the Jaffa Cake, Andy's favourite biscuits, isn't it?
No, is it a biscuit?
Don't get into that. It's just cake.
That's Tuesday's discussion on BBC Local.
I don't mind a Jaffa Cake. Have you had lemon Jaffa?
Good for half time, you see. Jaffa Cake.
Have you had lemon and lime Jaffa?
No, I haven't.
Nice. What's
your favourite Jaffa Cake?
No,
should we start with Leeds and Wigan, because it was... Oh, look at this attendance not given. What's going on with the Headingley club? What's going on there? Did your man forget to read it out? He's usually good.
No, I think there wasn't one. The press were asking after the game, and there was officially...
Pete Smith would have been asking, because he needs to put it in his thing with his numbers.
No official attendance was given.
I know Steve Mascott doesn't understand why we get annoyed about this in this country, because it's always been this way. We've always known. They used to put. I've got all these old programmes where in the Challenge Cup final, they used to give the attendances and the gate receipts. Mm-hmm. Got some old accounts from Wakefield where every game is itemised in terms of pounds, shillings, and pence.
I think there were concerns beforehand.
7,103 apparently at Leeds.
Is that the official? Yeah.
That's with what around and carrying.
See, that's disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, because to be fair, when I turned it on, I was a little bit disappointed, based because I know you were suggesting last week there was. Almost looking at what I think you said, 14 or something.
I think when we got to the ground, it was obvious that tickets hadn't been bought in the manner in which they'd hoped it would. And I think it's safe to say that both clubs, especially Wigan, worked really hard to try and get people there. I suspect as well that if you watch that game as a neutral or even a sports lover on Saturday afternoon, you couldn't really ask for much more. Had absolutely everything.
No, it didn't detract, by the way, from the spectacle.
No, I think there were enough people in each of the areas, particularly, again, credit to the Wigan fans that were on the Western Terrace in the sun. There were enough of them, and the swing in the game was such that the crowd were a very important element of that all the way through, and the atmosphere and the backdrop they created was great. But that's a bigger issue about why aren't people going to Challenge Cup games. But what we saw, I thought, was compelling in every aspect.
It was great. I didn't see the entire game, but I saw enough of it to get the tail of it. And it was great. It was a great game. Good atmosphere. Good advert for the game on terrestrial TV, I thought.
So the big question on the back of it is, you know what's coming. Harry Newman, guilty or not guilty?
Well, before I answer that one, I would just say, I mean, the angle from behind the post with what Bevan French did was quite remarkable, actually. And in fairness to him, live, I thought if he passed, it may have gone forward. But I still think he should have passed, and he certainly should have passed in the first half and got very lucky. And he didn't learn his lesson, in my opinion.
And that's the thing, more than anything, is that if you've been through that experience and you think, got away with one there, the next time it happens, you have to give it, whether it's rolled forward or...
Yeah, I just wondered whether, because people were saying last week that Harry Newman won that game almost single-handedly, which I thought was a little bit unfair, had it gone to his head. And Jamie Peacock's comments were interesting, weren't they?
Yeah, I think clearly there is a feeling that he has to change the game himself, and it is a team sport. The other thing that, obviously all the analysis was around that post-match, and I think the thing is, on every indicator, Wigan deserved to win that game. But in cup ties, it's not about who deserves to win. It's who takes that one chance when it really matters and actually does win. 4 tries to 2, Harry Smith missed a couple of goals. The comeback from being 14 down, which showed great amount of resilience. Wigan had everything in their favour to say they deserved to be in the hat for the next round. Harry Smith had to pass that. Harry Newman, too many Harrys, had to pass that ball, because that was the one chance his team were going to get 4 minutes from the end. And if Richie Myler had dropped it, if a Wigan covering defender had come back, if it had been ruled forward, if it had gone to the screen and they'd seen an obstruction in the build-up, you can't live with the fact that you didn't give it, because once you decide to go, that whole responsibility is on you, and it was the wrong thing to do.
And I think Rowan Smith's comments is to protect the player. I think.
Yeah.
I think most Leeds fans would hope that is the case.
Absolutely.
And behind closed doors, there's a slightly different conversation.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting
100%.
to see the reaction of his teammates actually behind closed doors.
Let's rewind a couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Because I forgot to mention this, because we had all those bank holidays. Well, some breaking news, but I'll come to that in a moment. Behind closed doors in a tunnel, what happened between Mr. Newman and his teammate?
Well, they're good friends, they're close friends, and they clearly felt that within the space that they were in, they could say something to each other. And I think in this ultra-competitive team environment, that's a common thing. But obviously it's not a great look when Tom Holroyd is saying to Harry Newman, "You've done something that I didn't like." I don't know what it was. I don't know if he felt, again, he was trying to do it all himself rather than be a team player. But, I don't think there's... You'll have heard what teammates say to each other on the field.
Well, that's not uncommon. That'll happen.
That's not an issue.
Just in the wrong place at the wrong
time.
If they'd have done
People
it
blew that out,
further
of
down
course,
the,
because they'd seen it
yeah.
in public rather than...
There'll always be disagreements behind closed doors, but it should be done behind closed doors. And Leeds always talked about the bubble. When they were having all that success with Brian McDermott, they talked about it being in the bubble and having that safe space to talk openly with each other, criticise each other openly. And making sure it is a safe space, it doesn't get leaked out. The reality is it happening in a tunnel is not a private space, is it? There's lots of people milling around in the tunnel. So I would expect there were comments made in the dressing room after the game. And also, by the way, there was an interesting tweet I saw that, I think if that had been a refereeing decision at that stage of the game, then people would have been calling for Chris Kendall's head, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see whether Newman gets selected this week off the back of that.
I think he will. It's whether you don't want to curb the things that he does well, but he has to appreciate that it is a team sport. And I think the other thing that Rowan Smith said that was right, but perhaps not relevant when it's a cup tie, is that no game is settled by one incident. It's a whole range of things. I absolutely agree with that. But when it's 3 minutes from time and that's your one chance to win it, it is settled by that incident, and that's where somebody needs to pull him on one side and say, look, I mean, if I'm Harry Newman's agent, I'm saying to him, you're one of the real talents that this sport's got. The sky is your limit. And at some point you might want to go to the NRL, and there might even be a market there for you to go to. But if too many clips like that go back to the NRL, you'll be crossed off the list, because there's other people that they'll look at. And I think the other thing that was missed is a lot of, understandably, Leeds fans on social media that were looking to protect him said, oh, he's only a young kid. He's 23. That's not young in terms of development. At 23, you almost should be an established full international if you've got that potential.
Well, a big game player comes up with a big game player, doesn't he?
Exactly.
And his opportunity was on a plate, really.
Yes.
And he didn't take it.
Yeah.
But I think, going back to Rowan Smith's comments, I wonder if he'd been so sympathetic had it been the referee that had made an equally sort of poor decision. I don't think he would. And
No, he wouldn't.
my point about Newman's selection, I absolutely think he should be selected. But would the same argument be levelled at a referee who'd made a decision? My view is actually converse to yours. I think you have to look at the 80-minute performance of Leeds. Yes, the moment came towards the end of the game, and yes, it had an impact on the result. But there'll be other things earlier on in the game that would have equally had an impact on the result. It just didn't come near the end.
Yeah, one of those things was how well Wigan played when they were losing. Because even at 14-0, there was a measure of control in what they were doing, and two players in particular for them were absolutely outstanding. Clearly Jake Wardle was in the things that you could see that he was doing, but that's the best I've seen Morgan Smithies play for a very long time in keeping a team in a game when they're in danger of losing it. And yeah, you know, the fact that Leeds were 14-0 up but couldn't hold on to that there's deficiencies in the Leeds game that Rowan Smith will look at. But I just think in a cup tie, those rules go out the window. And if you did, you know, if that's Wembley, that's tackle 52, isn't it? Nobody remembers who was the better team between Warrington and Hull over the 80 minutes. We talk about Danny Houghton made a tackle at the end that won them the game, and that's
we do, but it's an oversimplification.
Of course,
simplification, if I can get it out, of what goes into an 80-minute performance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Harry Newman, the sorry fell on him, didn't it?
Yeah.
At the weekend, but he's just got to learn from that, and that's the more interesting part, I think, to it. In that, I'd be interested to know how he responds to it, how the players responded to it, how the coach responded to it behind the scenes, and ultimately, it's for us to view on the field as to see how he responds when he gets another opportunity.
It could be the making of it, because clearly he's gone from hero to zero in 7 days.
Yeah.
You know, his interceptions at Wigan, and you know, he's celebrating them in advance of getting the ball down, which is something I don't like actually, which I think does tell you a little bit about get the try scored and then celebrate as much as you want.
Yeah.
If that had been in the days of Tony Smith at Leeds,
Harry
Newman would have been dropped the next week. But you know, you go from that euphoria of coming out of one dressing room and the desolation a week later coming, that shapes you as a character. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, they've got St Helens this week, which again is another big game on telly. All the build-up's going to be, how's Harry Newman going to be this week? How is he going to be this week? It's part of the great narrative around that game. Yeah. But I'm interested to see how he does.
Yeah.
One assumes that the England coach was there on Saturday.
I believe he was.
We know how he feels about Jake Connor. Well, we don't know, but we can assume how he feels about Jake Connor because Jake Connor doesn't get in the England team. Is that a worry for Harry Newman going forward?
It's the potential making of him, though, isn't it? Because if the England coach, who won't be backward in placing a phone call on Sunday saying, this is something I want you to work on. I think, you know, again, this isn't a Harry Newman witch hunt, but 2 of the Wigan tries were defensive misreads from Harry.
And his try was very entertaining to watch because obviously he probably shouldn't have scored and should have passed it to Richie Myler, but he didn't, and he scored and it was great and he was juggling and this.
So, you know, I think Sean Wayne would have rung him up or will have spoken to him today maybe and just said, here's your list of things you need to work on if you want me to pick you at the end of the year.
Yeah, and we talked last week about James Roby, didn't we, and consistency in performance.
Yep.
And if you want to get to that sort of level, and there's not much beating that level, is there? But you've got to have consistency in performance. So the performance he put in at Wigan in the league has to then be matched the following week against Wigan in the Cup, and unfortunately for him it didn't, did it?
Yeah.
I haven't got a hat, but if I had, I'd be taking it off to Dave Woods. Remember, Junior Nsemba. Brilliant line. I hope he didn't prepare that because I don't like those, but that was very good. Breaking news. Thanks to C on YouTube has pointed this out. Kyle Amos retired.
What, effective immediately?
Yeah, he obviously didn't fancy an early start against Swinton at the Bash on Saturday, so yeah. But he's on the telly all the time. Now, as Tim says, he's going to be unveiled as new presenter of This Morning. So, imagine he's got the other Schofield on. Oh, he'd be great on that, wouldn't he? So yeah, well done, Kyle Amo. I'll put that video up I did with him, the interview after the grand final, where he had to go at people saying not giving the Saints enough credit, because that was a really good one.
The other Schofield did ring about Mr. Newman's performance, but I won't relay what he said.
Did you hear what John Wilkins said about him, or did he miss that bit?
I didn't ask him. He was telling me what he thought of Mr. Newman.
I wonder how that affects his, because it wasn't in a testimonial year, Kyle, because he was due to play a testimonial game, I think, a Cumbria game at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, come out of the time of that one, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Junior Nsemba was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it's great to see another youngster given a chance on the big stage who changed. Well, he didn't change the game on his own, but his presence helped give Wigan the ascendancy when they really needed it, and his try was wonderful reward for that. And again, I hope that's a name that we're talking about for years to come. He looked a huge physical.
Yeah, he took some stopping, didn't he? When he
for
got
a
near the
young
line.
kid.
Yeah.
But I think they've used him really well as well. And you know, I think one of the issues the sport has got, and it's been exposed again this weekend, is we have a dearth of talent at the moment. But then you look at somebody like him and you think there's a bit of hope that they're still out there. We just perhaps need to mine a little further and deeper to find them.
Martin O'Fire, you may remember him, he scored some tries in the old
I've heard of him.
He described Harry Newman as Gary Schofield 2.0. They have just needs to get the scrum cap on now. Try and go up to whoever the chairman's office and ask for more money and wonder where Ellery Hanley is and stuff. But there you go. High praise from Martin O'Fire. He was very good on the telly. They showed a highlight reel of his career, which not only showed him scoring against Bath, as I believe it's contractually applies to say, who are one of the rugby union teams who haven't gone bust. So congratulations to them. Where's the BBC investigation into that? And scoring for Salford. And I saw him playing for Salford against Wakefield, and he was dreadful.
London?
No, I didn't see any London tries on there. But
Played at Wembley for London.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. But, and of course, they invented that chant about him at Twickenham, which everyone knows is a lot of old whatever Harry Smith said. So Leeds are out, and all the West Yorkshire teams are out of the cup.
First time it's ever happened, apparently.
Dreadful.
It's an incredible record, that, isn't it?
Dreadful.
Yeah.
Even
I
before West
blame-
Yorkshire existed.
I blame
They're all
Dewsbury.
there.
I don't know what that says other than the fact that
It was a tough draw. It was just a tough draw, Phil. I mean, tough draw. I mean,
the power does lie, sadly, west of the Pennines at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it clearly does. I mean, Super League table shows you that, doesn't it?
But also in East Yorkshire, and I think we do need to mention that whilst West Yorkshire isn't represented, both of East Yorkshire's sides.
Craig Lingard knocked out by 2 different Hull clubs in the same weekend. That must be some kind of pointless record. Not that I can blame him for either of those results. Hull Kingston Rovers, who were...
He didn't have his shoes on yesterday, did he, Castle?
There you go. Hull Kingston Rovers, who are trying to sign Tyler Dupree, allegedly, and more on that to come. Beat Bentley 50-0 in front of a crowd of not applicable. So, I mean, that's exactly... I think that is what it is, as kind of scoreline, isn't it?
Again, talking to Craig a little bit about that yesterday, pace caught them out, particularly early on. They don't come up against the likes of Mikey Lewis and Ethan Ryan, and you give them half a gap, and what was it, 6 tries in the first half, that was game over, and great experience. Batley apparently, although they lost 50-0, tackled really well for a part-time club playing on a Friday night, and didn't give it up at any point, but you know, well done to Hull KR for being ruthless.
Yeah, it comes across as a pretty professional performance, doesn't it, from Hull KR to nail the opposition, no matter who your opposition is.
It is what it is, as they annoying people like me say.
Dewsbury fans were smiling that Batley got beat.
Yeah, but Dewsbury fans have to sit at home. Well, no, they can go watch the game against London Skolars rather than watch Batley at the Bash this week against Halifax, who lost to St Helens 26-6 in a game marred by. So who's the worst then? Is it Harry Newman or is it Morgan Knowles, who is Super League's first ever part-time professional player because he's banned all the time? 2 games he's got for taking the head off the young Halifax player. I mean, I didn't watch the game, I was working, but I saw the clip on the social media, so that's all I needed to see. Took his head off, and there he is, another ban for Morgan Knowles. 2 games seem about right.
Yeah, it probably is about right. He would have probably got an extra one based on his record, really, because I don't know what, I think it was graded as C. I can't remember what the boundary is for C, but it was probably 1 to 2, and he probably gets the 2 because of his record, which bluntly is bad. Yeah, I think he's played, and I added up, I think he's played something like 15 games and had 5 bans from those 15 matches, so once every 3rd game he's getting a ban. I mean, clearly the St Helens fans know that themselves, they don't need anybody else to tell them, do they? They're as frustrated as anybody else, so he's clearly got something to work on. But I mean, how stupid, with what, 20 seconds to go?
26-0.
Just went in completely and utterly recklessly into that challenge that just doesn't need to be made.
On your first game back, having served a 5-match ban as well.
Yeah, so if you're
So
talking
again,
going back
like,
to Harry Newman, then you know,
what-
is he learning?
perfect.
Is
Yeah.
Morgan Knowles learning his lesson? Well,
He's only
based
at least
on
26.
facts, you'd suggest not at this stage, which is the frustration of St Helens fans.
Well,
But he's going to have to learn that.
Came very
because-
close to missing the grand final last year. For,
incredibly close. He's missed. He's now missing 7 games. I don't know. There's probably other bans he may have had this year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's at least 7, and we've only played what? How many games have we played?
13, if you include the
Something
cup
like that.
ties.
Yeah, you know,
Well, 14 if you played in the World Club
you
Championship.
to have a player that's probably paid as much as he is playing about 50% of your matches. I mean, fairness to James Bentley, we've not spoken much about James Bentley's discipline this year, and that was a constant talking point last year. So,
Absolutely.
you know, he's clearly changed his game, but Morgan knows he's going to have to do the same.
And I suspect that Morgan Knowles has been under coaches who have mentioned this to him, so it becomes a personal thing. You know, I can't imagine Christian Wolff, for example, would have tolerated the fact that one of his star men wasn't available as often as he should have been. Paul Wellens, I think, made a veiled reference to it in his press conference afterwards, saying not happy about the discipline of his players at certain points in a game, and that was clearly a finger pointing exercise at Morgan Knowles.
Yeah.
As a coach,
And Sean Wayne will be on to him again. I mean, Sean Wayne, will bang the table.
or John
talk
Keir
about
if he's playing for Wales.
Yeah, but he's switched allegiance, I think, hasn't he? Yeah, you'll be talking about the brutalist of brutal contact and all that he talks about, but it's got to be done in a controlled manner.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's going to have to sort his tackle tech out.
Andy says he's got the week off for Magic, so no doubt he'll be doing the press next week.
I think the other thing about that game was, we talk about crowds quite rightly. We worry about why crowds aren't turning up for the Challenge Cup. Does that need a change of format? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's an economic thing. But 4,700 at the Shea is a fantastic attendance. The atmosphere looked and sounded great. Again, social media afterwards was saying what a great occasion. Well done Halifax for making it. The champions are in town, but making people get.
But that's
down
what the
to
cup's
watch it.
about, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about those away days for the Super League teams, the home matches against a big club. I remember when I think Dewsbury played Wigan in the Challenge Cup. I remember going to watch that as a young kid, and would even, dare I say, go up to watch Batley when they were playing a big club.
I think I was at that game. Didn't Dewsbury hold them for about 50 minutes?
I think they might have done, yeah. But a tight pitch at Dewsbury, and players playing probably above their usual level week in, week out. And looking at the scoreline, as I said, I didn't watch the game, but they've obviously put in a respectable performance. Halifax.
I think the only thing about the romance of the cup, which we hark back to when we won, is that at some point romance has to happen. Whereas I think we do know that Halifax have done great, and we're praising them for how they've done, and what we're saying is it was credible, but they never looked like winning.
No, but it's just a different sport to football, isn't it?
It's the same with St Helens last year. They went to Whitehaven, didn't they? And
they did.
Whitehaven had a fantastic day and big crowd, and Saints won by 30 odd. And we need it's the romance element that we can't get back, because full-time teams will always be
the gulf's just too big, isn't it? It's just too big a gap, and you might get the occasional one, say for example a Lee last year that were in effect were a Super League team and playing in the Championship, and that's going to be the exception. As we found out, Featherstone lost to Halifax, didn't they, in the previous round of the Cup? So Halifax, in theory, were, I suppose, based on the league table position, you'd argue the best team in the Championship.
Well, I think it's great for York that they're through and have got a potential money-spinning tie against Lee.
Brilliant for me, because I backed Lee each way now for the Cup, so that's perfect for me. Absolutely perfect.
And I'm sure that York are cognizant of the fact that they're not going to get much further in the competition. Might have wanted a side that brings the kind of glamour that I'm not sure that'll be a televised game. York Lee, whereas I think York Wigan or York Warrington, York St Helens might.
Are they all on TV in this one? It's like a couple on the BBC and a couple on Viaplay.
Don't know how
I can't remember it works now.
It could be, you could be right actually, because I think they've done that in the previous
it's probably not going to be
It's
the
not going to be the
BBC.
BBC Saturday afternoon.
The BBC game is clearly going to be Wigan Warrington, isn't it? Or
that'll
Warrington
be
Wigan,
Saturday.
whichever way around that
And
was.
you'd think St Helens will be the Sunday game.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly. Oh, that whole KR Salford game, I think it could be an entertaining game. It wouldn't surprise me if they picked that.
I did read somewhere that Wigan might have to play that game at Leeds due to reseeding at the DW, but I don't know if that's Someone can, I don't know anything.
They are supposed to be one of these clubs that are away from home for 6 weeks. I think that will be interesting.
But I could be completely wrong.
No, I think you might be right.
Wigan, Warrington, York Lee, Hull KR Salford, and Hull FC St Helens. So it could still have that all-Hull final.
Or a Wigan Saints final.
Wigan Saints final, yeah. And I'm
sure that never happened.
Sure, if the RFL, either would be a good result from a crowd's point of view. Getting a Hull derby or a Wigan Saints derby is going to be
Wigan
a good
Lee.
attendance. Wigan Lee,
Wigan Lee. Not Saints Warrington again. Salford.
They're playing pretty well.
What beat Huddersfield 42-40. I think I got the score difference exactly on in this one, which is amazing because it was 24-0 or something after 20 minutes, something ridiculous.
Which again would raise questions for both teams. That Huddersfield needed to come out and make a statement, and they're 24-0 down in 23 minutes.
So their season's over now.
It's difficult for them at the moment. But Salford again, as the coach, you would be saying, when we're that dominant that early, why are we hanging on that the last play of the game we could lose? And 80 odd points have been scored in 80 minutes. So I don't know if that's where we are in the season at the moment. There's a bit of fatigue has set in, but
yeah, it comes back to my sort of recurring point out for me. A lot of it that will be to do with the mental attitude.
Yeah,
24-0 after 23
Cue
minutes.
on the rack.
Cue on the rack. It's a warm day. We've done the job, but actually, in a cup game, you haven't, have you? No.
And I think there's that other attitude that the team that looks like they've lost throw a little bit of caution to the wind, because what's the worst that can happen? Passes start to stick. Apparently Theo Farge was very good on his return in setting up a lot of the Huddersfield tries, which good to see him back.
They haven't been scoring an awful lot of points, Huddersfield, have they? So
No.
From an attacking point of view, that was good, but clearly they're not working to Ian Watson's process in terms of defence.
But what do they do now? I mean, they've got a really big game against Castleford this week.
I think that's a huge game, because Castleford, I don't know if they rested players or they had injured players.
Both. Well, I don't know if they rested. I think, again, Andy Lass was saying they'd had a bit of illness in the camp, and clearly survival is more important this year. I don't think they were going to go on a cup run, and whether there was some tactical decisions to withdraw certain players.
That's what I wondered, whether there was an element of that. But
that is a massive game.
And it's at Huddersfield, isn't it?
Yeah.
So again, in terms of the pressure, I would say the pressure's more on Huddersfield than it is on Castleford.
Which makes Castleford slightly more dangerous if they're bringing back people like Jacob Miller next week, because again, the half-back pairing of Joe Westerman and Paul McShane wasn't enough, nor should we have thought it ever would be.
Can't believe that Leeds beat Wakefield 40 points to 12, and again in front of a crowd of not applicable.
The story coming out of Wakefield this week was
James Ford's
departure. Yeah,
and
it probably came as a bit of a surprise, I think, to most people.
What was said in the aftermath of him going, with Mark Applegarth saying, "I want us to be a bit freer in our attacking style. We've been restricted," almost saying that was James Ford.
That was
the other fella. That wasn't me.
And I don't want to play. I don't want to feel as though they're shackled and then they concede a try in the very first set of the game.
I thought they were mates, but it doesn't sound like they are.
But one would also say that the head coach is the head coach and the other fella's not.
Yeah, and I think again there's
not to defend James Ford.
With a feeling of the way Featherstone are going at the moment, that is almost a bit. I'm jumping ship now because I'll be passing you going down the other.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, which I don't think would have gone down particularly well at Wakefield.
No.
But no, I thought that was an interesting comment reading between the lines, that if James Ford had been in charge of the attack and they couldn't score any points this year.
But if he's gone to a director of rugby role, which is in effect a recruitment role, then he probably didn't put on his CV his recruitment into Wakefield, I wouldn't have thought.
It just doesn't look great for Trin at the moment, I'm afraid.
No.
Sadly. I take no joy in saying that, but...
they're away at Catalan this week, so that doesn't get any easier, does it?
Who are smarting from losing in the last minute themselves this week.
Yeah, to the Warrington Wolves, who march on in there. They could win everything this season. They could win the treble. Forget about this. It's always it could be their year at the moment.
The Wigan game in the next round is massive for them, because we know what they can do on any given week. But when they put in a position where they're coming up against the teams that they're most likely going to play in a playoff, in a one-off game, in a cup tie that means progression or not. So far this year, they've lost against those two opponents. To take Wigan on now in a quarter-final, I think this is a test of how far Warrington have come since they lost around that Easter time. So that will be a really interesting. They showed a lot of character to come back and win it in the last minute.
Yeah, because
they were 12-0 up.
I thought Catalan might have won that game actually.
Yeah.
You know, before the weekend, particularly because they lost the last game narrowly. So obviously it's similar. Well, it was a similar result, really, wasn't it? A 2-point margin, I think it was in the league as well. But you're right that Warrington's test will come against Wigan. But I said that looking at the fixtures for this week, they're away at Lee. That's not going to be easy. I don't think.
It's not.
So. Yeah, obviously I didn't see the Catalan game, and I think they've not probably been firing on all cylinders, have they, for the last few weeks, but they've managed to get the result against OKR, and they got the result at the weekend.
I think when you come back from 12 down to be leading 14-12 going into the last couple of plays, then you would think that they would see the job through. Again, I could only listen to a French commentary, and the desolation when Matty Ashton scored.
Yeah, but the joy from Warrington when they did score, you know, obviously see what it means to them.
And I think Darryl Powell said afterwards that, you know, they'd passed a really significant test, and they have, but it's going to be magnified in the quarterfinals now.
To go to Catalan twice though in the space of a few weeks and get 2 wins, there aren't many teams that will do that.
No, other than Leeds last year.
Great result for the RFL, of course. They don't have to worry about Catalan selling no tickets for the final. I'm joking. Cass Hull, you were there.
I was.
I mean, I had it on at work in the corner, but I was busy trying to work out what was going on at the toaster. So tell me all
probably
about
more exciting, actually.
What the delays were. I was sat there, when's the dogs coming out? When the dogs coming out? There's some dogs. 32
I thought you meant the toaster. You were putting some bread in, and it was malfunctioning for your tea.
I mean, that was probably even more exciting as well. Hull FC, they're back now because they've won 4 games in a row. They are back. They've beaten Wakefield, who are rubbish, Castleford, who are rubbish, Huddersfield, who are rubbish, and Wigan, who... No, Wigan are all right. But Hull are back, and they beat Castleford, and they're in the next round of the Cup. And in fairness, Hull, we always thought they were going to get better at some point. It can't help that the fixtures draw them against Wakefield and Castleford, who were no good at the minute, but they won the game.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that game, to be honest, because there was a disparity on the team sheet before we started. The important thing for Hull is that they only conceded a try in each half, and they're clearly getting a combination, as Tony Smith said afterwards, from the Jakes. Clifford ran the show, and Truman with every game is looking more influential. And as he said, you know, they're taking pressure off each other, so that makes them more dangerous. I think there was a lot more structure about them. I don't know how good they are because they weren't really tested, and you know, and that isn't through any fault of some of the youngsters that played for Castleford. That Will Tate looked very good on the wing. But there's just bigger issues at Cass at the moment in getting personnel out on the field that can win them a game. And Andy Lass was a bit frustrated, but I don't think that's going to determine their season. It's going to be, can they pick up another couple of wins to just take the pressure of relegation away.
But
it wasn't.
So was the highlight the caption coming up wrong on the first video referee?
That was interesting. Because clearly they didn't go to the grounding, and it was so obvious that there were 2 people in the tackle, and everybody in the ground was going, "Oh yeah, that'll be disallowed." Try what?
Press the wrong button.
And then Liam Moore was running back up the field, giving a penalty, going, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, to dispel the myth.
Pressing the wrong button.
Yeah, well, to dispel the myth, it isn't the video referee that presses the button. So there's only been a few games where the video referee presses the button. So that in France during COVID, when we were under the stand, we were actually given a button to press, try or no try. I mean, that was absolute power.
Was it in French?
It was red or green, so but essay or no, or essay refusé. But you could press it and it would come up on the screen in the ground.
Wow.
You know,
it's almost like having the nuclear code.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I felt like Donald Trump.
So let's
hope you didn't.
As we dispel this, so when you've got the headset on, you haven't got Eddie and Steve in your head.
No. So Ben was video referee, so he would have been probably sat in the outside broadcast truck. And what usually happens is once they go to the video referee, in the old days the microphones were dropped from the audio was dropped from the commentary team. But now the video referee speaks anyway, and the commentators don't speak. So there's only him speaking. He's speaking to air and to the director, and then he will just announce his decision once the microphone's gone down. So he'll just say, right, I've made a decision, take his microphone off, and he'll tell the director, no try. Somebody in the van has pressed the wrong button.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Ben.
Bring back the
Bring
roulette
that
wheel.
missile. Bring that missile back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Where's that roulette wheel go?
But it happened in the last World Cup in 2013 here in a game at Warrington, I think, when Thierry was video referee. So it's not the first time, but funny.
That was the Challenge Cup. I mean, we did mention York. I
think the worry for Castleford as well was the crowd, and I know that
it's on the telly, Phil, and
Yeah,
it was sunny, and
but-
we could have.
again, credit to the Hull
Well,
fans
yeah.
that there were more of them than Cass, and I get the Cass fans didn't think they were going to win. It's a fee-paying game on top of your season ticket, all understandable.
Yeah.
But that would be a concern that the away fans were in greater number than the home ones.
Lots of grumblings at Cass. I mentioned it last week. There's lots of grumblings.
Training pitch,
What's up with the training pitch?
it's in an appalling condition. And
Is
if
it it's used as a car park now or something?
No, I think there's a lot of community usage on it, but if that is used for training by the first team, it's full of potholes.
I don't think that, well,
They
I
can't
may be wrong.
possibly train there
I went
because
on-
no wonder
yeah.
they've got injuries.
That's usually immaculate. I mean, as is the pitch is usually immaculate. So I
The
don't
pitch
know.
was perfect,
yeah.
but the training pitch was.
I don't know the
full of-
story there, but they when I last did a club visit to Castleford, it was in pre-season, which tends to be when teams use 3G pitches more given the weather. But I may be wrong, but they were training up at near Pontefract Racecourse. There's a sort of
Yes.
a leisure centre there and a
Yes.
3G pitch. So I'm not sure if they use that now.
But I'm saying if
Through
that's
the season.
indicative of,
Yeah,
you
I
know, you
suspect they
couldn't
probably
use
use
that
that
as a
3G,
training pitch.
no.
Yeah.
When I went to see them pre-season, that's where they were. Yeah. And League One, which was back this week for about 3 weeks. Doncaster beat London Scholars 60 points to 30.
Again, you'd worry for Doncaster at considering that number of points.
And as you mentioned last week,
90 points in
I
80
know.
minutes.
Yeah.
great
Incredible.
initiative to have the amateur game on before community game on before the main game at Doncaster. Hunslet beat Workington 22-18. Midlands 14, North Wales 42. Oldham 26, Dewsbury 26.
North Wales first win that.
Yeah, it was.
And Rochdale 62, Cornwall 6.
But the big game at Oldham, which was a sellout.
Yeah, 26 all. I mean, the tickets were free, weren't they, apparently, but still it's
What was the crowd? What's the sellout at?
1,295.
Is it? Wow.
So you've got to turn up. People have got to turn up.
It's
You need
just.
free
I
tickets.
mean, have you been?
To the Vestacare.
Yeah.
I've seen the
Yeah,
camera
it's-
angle there.
It's
appalling.
terrible. It's terrible. I mean, they've probably got about 2 rows of seating, and then the rest is basically just a perimeter fence, like a National Conference League ground, but with a 3G pitch with markings all over it. They clearly see why next year they wanted to return to Boundary Park, and it's a shame really that I guess a game like that wasn't at Boundary Park, but. Yeah, 1,200 people around effectively a perimeter fence. It's gonna have a good atmosphere, really.
And a
But,
great result.
Yeah.
First point that Dewsbury have had taken off them all year.
They'll be gutted that they just missed out. Late try from the Rams in that one. Gareth says, is it true Enmore's packed in playing? Yes, because someone told us earlier. So I don't know what he's going to be doing now, apart from being on telly. He's teaching or something.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
teaching
I mean,
at Cowley School.
He was on. Was that the
Ray
Ray
French.
French?
Yeah.
There you go. Andy says, did IMG / the RFL not announce that the semis and standalone matches must be backing a big attendance? I can't remember what they've said about the semi-finals this year for the cup.
I don't know if there has been an announcement.
No. I think they were looking at 2 separate games.
I think Andy's
Because that's one of the
right,
reasons why they
something's
moved the women's
been-
final to Wembley.
A
But
massive day of rugby.
there is something that needs doing with the Challenge Cup, and I'm not sure it's just the format, because as I said, there's talk of 8 groups of 3 at that stage.
Not 3 team groups.
And that will give a Championship club the chance to play a Super League team, and it will also give a Super League team the knowledge that they've got that extra home game that they can put in a season ticket package. But I'm not sure that works.
Give it
When
a
you get
chance
down
to
to
come a guaranteed
24.
defeat.
Well, I don't think IMG know, do they? Because
No,
their
but
original
that's one of the
suggestion
ones-
what's the phrase? Where they play each other.
Two-legged.
Two-legged,
Yeah,
that's it.
that's
it's
gone out the
it's a
window.
really bad idea.
But obviously that was their idea, so if they clearly don't know.
No.
Is it just that?
But I think it's partly economic that we've got into a season ticket culture whereby, on average, if you're a season ticket holder, you're paying £15 a game, possibly slightly less, and then you're being asked to buy your own seat for 25 quid.
It's the same with the playoffs.
Doesn't
isn't it?
really
They
work.
don't have the same. They should be the big games of the season, and they aren't in terms of attendance. And with the cups as well, is it just they are an anachronism in a sense, and that, as we've seen in football, which is the only other obvious example to use, early rounds of cups aren't well supported.
Absolutely, but I do think when you've got
well.
Wigan and Leeds who,
are
you know, that on a Saturday afternoon in the sun, at a stadium that is as welcoming as you can get in terms of its facilities at the moment, to not draw more than 7,000 fans is a concern.
It is, but it was a beautiful day, middle of the afternoon. It's on free to air TV.
Yeah.
Do we go sit in a beer garden? Do we take the kids out to the park and watch it in the afternoon at home?
Or do we take the kids to Headingley? That's 100 quid.
Exactly. So I think the clubs have got to make them. They've got to make the tickets cheap. I'm not saying that is just the answer by the way.
No, but I think that's more of the answer than let's keep tweaking the format.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, as we said earlier, you cannot put the romance back in the cup.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a Port Vale fan and you've got Manchester City at home, and you might get a draw and a replay at the Etihad, or you want to see your guys bring down Manchester City because they're playing 11 reserves because they've got 57 other competitions to be playing. We don't have the possibility of an upset anymore, and that's to me is a playing issue more than an economic issue, and you don't solve that by having groups or. I don't know how you do solve it.
I don't know. It's a difficult one. You can't really include it in the season ticket, because they might not get a home game.
Unless you have these groups of 3 where you guarantee the home game, but
I don't see that word.
Will more people go? Probably not.
As Leeds Rhinos when we were playing the day after, could you just stick them on before or after?
Well, I think there's got to be more added value, and I don't know how you do that, but you've got to give people more reason to come. I just think the Leeds Wigan one is interesting because that is on the back of the week before where they played each other and there were stories coming out of it. Actually, you'd have thought that would have pulled more fans in.
But people in the playoffs, some people won't go to the playoff game because they'll save their money
for Old Trafford
for the final, which I just can't get my head around.
No.
But maybe that was because as a youngster I supported a club that probably was starved of. They were never in the top division. They had some success in their competition, but I can't possibly get my head around it. If you're a supporter of a club, you just go to every game. But
I think the other thing, and we're not comparing like with like, and I get that before anybody says it's always about Australia and the NRL. 17 teams in their division, 8 points I think between top and bottom this week. St George win and go bottom of the league. 6 teams are tied at the top. That is. I must go to a game this week because I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. My team are of every possibility of winning whatever their form is going into this game, or I'm going to see them lose. But I have to be there. And I know that's part of the reason of that is the salary cap is rigidly enforced and there's a lot more talent to pick from and everybody spends to the maximum. But that's what we've got to aspire to in some way. They don't have a cup competition for that very reason. But if they did, you'd want to go because actually you'd have no idea who was going to win in a knockout situation midway through the season. I think they might miss something if they've got a competition that is that close. The trouble is they've got Origin this time of year rather than the Cup.
Oh, don't mention that because now we've got to say. Oh, it should go. It's one of the headlines on the front of the paper today. Where is it? Let me get.
Oh no, don't go there.
Time for a return of War of the Roses, which is easy for Kevin Nicholas, the chairman of Batley, to say because none of his players would be involved on either side. Let's have a championship.
He's talking about a championship and League One War of the Roses and a
War of the
Roses
because that's what we want to say.
What happened to the Yorkshire Cup? That didn't last very long. It
was at Wakefield the other week. It's been
these things stop for a reason.
Yeah,
the reason was people were not going. But the point of bringing in the NRL analogy is if you have uncertainty of outcome to the extent that they currently do, they're breaking all records for crowds at the moment.
You're right, but also Super League crowds are up.
Yes.
So I'd be interested to see whether the cup crowds are any different to previous cup crowds. They're more difficult to compare because there probably wasn't a Leeds fixture last year, for example.
Who's at home.
Yeah.
Imagine if we still had cup final replays, people would moan about having to pay another 40 quid for a ticket to...
I mean, the other thing with the NRL and the structure of their competition, which nobody ever seems to mention or moan about, like people do here, is that with 17 teams, they don't play each other home and away.
No. And they have buy rounds where you can actually go away and do things, and they also take games on the road. That every week we're listening to or watching a game, and we're in Gosford or we're in Darwin, and like, yeah, but that's somebody's home game, and nobody's going, well, I won't.
Oh yeah, multiple teams playing at the same ground.
Yeah,
Wakefield and Castleford.
Well, their Magic weekend
So
was sold out every day. I have a horrible feeling that ours isn't going to be.
I can't talk about the patch in a minute. But what was I going to say? You were talking about the NRL. Something that was whizzing in my mind about the NRL, and I can't remember what it was now.
Origin.
Magic. No, it's okay. Not Origin. Not referees.
Petter Hick, who's coming to Hull Cow.
Good. Good for Hull Cow. Can we send some Wakefield players back? I'm going to tell Swell Braverman that they came on boats and get them deported.
Tyler Dupree's an interesting subject if we're talking about
before we talk about the Women's
transfers.
Cup. Right, so here's my problem, and this is a long established thing, because on this programme in the past I've railed against, I feel sorry for the Jamie Peacock and the likes of people who donated shirts and medals, and I don't know how much sentimental value they've got to the players, but they obviously have a monetary value that people would pay for them. But those players were, what's the legally correct language to use? They gave them up, and they may as well have
in good faith.
In good faith, and they may as well set the money on fire. When Widnes went nearly to the wall a couple of years ago, we had isn't it great? The kids donated their bike and sold it off to give someone a tenner or whatever. No, it's not good. And here's the situation with Salford now. And it's all about optics. It's not about what's actually going on. And I've read plenty of interviews with people from Salford who said this is the situation. It's not blackmail. We're not blackmailing supporters. However, you can now take out a loan to give money to the club. That's not a great optic when you're then turning down offers for players, because we're told that players have been underbid some other clubs, where you're signing players on 8-year contracts. It doesn't look great then if you're signing players on long-term contracts to then be asking a small amount of people for money constantly. And what happens after this, right? You've got your 250 grand. What happens next when the next bill comes along? Because you haven't got a big, rich owner, which is not your fault. It's not the fault of Wakefield that they haven't got one, or Castleford that they haven't got one. But Castleford aren't spending money they haven't got, apparently. And Wakefield, I know because I used to work there, don't spend money they haven't got. But Salford are asking, they've got the begging bowl out. That's what they've got here. This is the begging bowl. Salford fans can have a go at me, I don't care. And the club can have a go at me, I don't care. Because that's the perception to the people out there in this cost of living crisis. And I don't mean to go all Jeff Stelling on you, I didn't mean this, but kind of fallen into this trap. You can't turn down bids for players with one hand and then say, please give us your money for these shares in the club. Which it just doesn't, it doesn't add up. It doesn't sit well with me. It's like, right, I've had this cake. I'm eating all this cake. I'm having Phil's cake. I'm having James's cake. I want you to give me money for cake. And if you can't afford the money for cake to give to me, I'm not going to sell my collection of programmes. I'm going to ask you to borrow money to give me more money for cake and keep eating cake. But I'm not going to give you any cake. I just don't. It doesn't sit well.
Cake,
I know. So we've got penguins.
So explain to me how the loan business
Don't
works.
ask me about the cake analogy works.
No, not the cake analogy. So they set up a credit union, is that right?
Yeah.
So people borrow money from the club. Have I got this
From
right?
the credit union
From
to
the credit
pay the
union
club.
to pay the club.
So they're paying the club and some interest to the credit union. Now, they don't have to, they're not obligated to. And apparently it's come about because some fans wanted to pay by direct debit and they're not set up to take direct debit, but the credit union is.
But
a credit union per se has an interest element attached to
Have
it.
they been watching this Netflix film, the David Fishwick thing about the bank of Dave Fishwick?
I pay 26 quid a month by standing order, or my wife does, to Wakefield for some lines on a lottery. We get a season ticket at the end of the year. So clubs can't set up standing orders or direct debits or whatever. It just doesn't sit right. And yes, you can come out and say it's not blackmail, but we all know there's no rational thought with some sections of supporters at clubs. I spent 25 quid on shares at Wakefield because I went to a great presentation by John Harbin, who then left to go to Dewsbury straight afterwards because we were in the poo-poo. Give us your money. It was like Bob Geldof.
I think again you become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, because one of the things that the club are saying is, if you don't invest in us and buy shares, then we're going to have to sell our best players. Not surprisingly, another club then says, well, who's your best player at the moment? We'll put a bid in for them.
But they're probably going to have to sell them anyway at some point anyway. It just, like you said, you raise a sum of money, that sum of money runs out.
Well,
what happens
exactly.
next?
What's the plan
Do you
after
issue more
200?
shares?
And
you can't
what
just
are
keep
you
going
using
back to
that
the
money
same
for?
people.
No, and if that money is for more marketing, setting up an academy team, reserve grade, you're still going to have to sell your players.
It's just not a sustainable situation.
No. And I do think that clearly, again, Tyler Dupree is on a real upward trajectory. He's just been selected for England. People are talking about him when they're playing against Salford. His value is probably about at its peak at the moment. So if you are an ambitious club like Hull KR, now is a very good time to be trying to get a player like that.
And the reality is, a club like Salford, without the finances, they're going to end up in that situation whereby that's how they have to build their business.
But this is the same
players.
club that said we signed Brodie Croft on an 8-year contract.
Yeah,
how are you paying for that?
But my interpretation of that was that you sign him on a long-term contract in order to cash in, to sell him.
Yeah, but what you're saying is we're building a club around him. At the same time, you're saying what we're doing is ensuring so that when we do sell him, well, again,
we'll get the money.
It's a bit of a mixed message.
Is the T-shirt that you've worn today any
it was
subliminal reference?
Yes, I thought.
For those who are on the podcast, he's wearing a T-shirt with a red devil and skull and crossbones.
And it's just ranted.
Oh no, not skull, but the crossbones.
And it says support your local football club on the back of it, and it's a reference to Real York, and I don't live in York. so I just, these things annoy me because you can talk about, it's not blackmail as much as you want, but we all know the real world of how sport works and sport supporters work, and some will think, my club's about to disappear, and we know that they don't.
I think there also is a case to say that Tyler Dupree is playing very well at the moment, but he did sign a contract extension 2 or 3 weeks ago, and what now is the value of that contract if he wants to be put on the transfer list because somebody else has come in for him?
It's all the agent's fault, though. That's what it's saying in the state. The agent has
I don't know if it's the agent's
request.
fault. I don't know who his agent is, but I'm just saying it doesn't sit quite right either from the other side that a player that is prepared to commit is now 3 weeks down the line saying, "Will you release me because somebody's made me a better offer?"
But is that are players thinking, well, what if this? You're saying with this one hand,
No, and you
they're all mercenaries. They're all mercenaries.
They are in the spotlight and at the height of their value for a very short period of time, and they need to cash in on that. But
don't sign the contract.
To do it a couple of weeks after you've signed a contract, that doesn't sit quite right either.
You just have to accept once you've signed it, you've signed it. In my opinion, unless the club is prepared to sell you.
To be honest as well, if Hull KR had offered me £100,000 at this moment for Tyler Dupree, I would be tempted to take that, because I think that probably is £100,000 that...
You may be able to do a swap as well. Sometimes in those deals you get a swap as well.
Another player involved,
Not Corey Hall again, he's only just gone there. Can't keep moving around.
But the reality is, what I'm trying to say is, clubs like that, unless somebody comes in with a load of money, they have to cut their cloth accordingly. And we've talked before about where clubs who don't own their own ground, how do they generate income? Hull KR are in a different position, aren't they? With looking at what their plans are for that ground, the Craven Street, etc. The people they brought in off the field and the support that they seem to be getting. Their numbers are going up in terms of people coming through the gates and the season ticket holders. All the positive signs are there, and which no disrespect to Salford, because it's not just about Salford. This is probably a wider piece, isn't it? That sport's not an industry in which it's renowned for people making money in it.
In fact, if you want to, don't get involved.
Absolutely.
And I do think as well that the difficulty for Salford is more than anything their tenure and how secure that is. And we've heard a couple of stories about a guy who wants to come in and buy the AJ Bell and make them secure tenants. We've heard about there's been discussions with the council and with all the money that's gone into Salford and the fact that they carry the name of the city, they're right behind what they want to do. Secure your future as to where you're going to play, and ideally get some revenue streams out of where you're going to play, and then maybe have a supporters You know, if you want to buy shares because we're a stable club and we're going, you know, you would buy shares in Hull KR at the moment if they were on offer.
I wouldn't, but
No, but if
You're smart.
but if it was
Yeah,
a
yeah, I
business
get what your point,
proposition,
yeah.
you possibly would look at that. Whereas
Yeah.
at the moment, you say, you know, Salford are saying, please buy shares. You go, what am I actually buying?
Yeah.
Because you don't have any security. But that's not saying that Salford fans shouldn't buy shares, because we're not here to advise.
It goes back to Bradford again, and when, you know, the aforementioned Eddie and Steve on Sky were just basically guilt-tripping people and keeping the club afloat. Look, hey, they're still alive. Bradford Bulls still exist. They're not where they were, but they weren't where they were at that point either.
They haven't got a coach now.
But what about Wasps?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how many?
What about London Irish? What about Wasps?
Yeah.
Wasps is
Wasps
hilarious,
have got to
isn't it?
start in, was it London Division 8 or
Goodness
something?
knows. I
Played the Dagenham Girl Pipers in their opening home game.
And I think Bury FC, I think they're talking about coming back and playing back at Gig Lane. Because that ground's been mothballed for a while. And yeah, as you're right, Swinton played there. They do tend to come back. It's very rare that they don't come back in some form or other.
Sheffield Eagles, classic example.
They're still around.
Yeah, and Huddersfield.
Yeah, the fact that they rebuilt on the back of that.
Gateshead, merged with Hull and reborn, etc., etc.
Nottingham City, though, they've got. So I'd say 40 years since Hull KR played Cardiff at Nottingham's Forest ground, just randomly.
And we still think that it would be a good place to take Magic Weekend.
Next week,
There's nothing we haven't done, we just haven't done it well.
Next week, I've got a hell of a programme for you in terms of random matches played in random places.
Oh, I thought you meant a programme.
Oh, this
programme.
No.
I wondered who was coming on.
A double header played somewhere. You won't believe.
It almost sounded good, didn't it?
Yeah, I was excited. I wondered who was coming.
Got that clickbait. You won't believe where this match was played unless you do know where it was. Women's Cup. Before we get on to other news, was there anything more to say about Tyler Dupree? Nothing.
No, I just think
He might go. He might not.
Yeah.
Leeds and Huddersfield couldn't have played as the pre-match at Henley because it was a Huddersfield
Huddersfield's
home
home
game.
game.
But they could have done.
They could. Because I think we knew in advance who was going to win that.
Yeah, it was Leeds, 52-0. I saw.
Double header this Friday. Leeds.
Yes,
St Helens.
hopefully I'm allowed to go.
So they're both on TV, aren't they?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the Women's Cup draw's made at some point in it on Five Live.
Kevin Sinfield signing his book
Is he?
at the game. Well, before the game.
I saw.
Obviously, it hasn't got a trestle table on the
Just
halfway.
halfway line. I saw the Rhinos. Bethan Dainter scored for the Army the other week in the other lot. Not
She got a hat trick in that game.
So and then she scored 2 against Huddersfield. Actual Huddersfield. No, I'm going to call
She
them
played
Huddersfield.
standoff.
Wigan beat Salford 60-0 in the Women's Cup. Bradford beat Alton 38-6. Hull KR lost to Barrow 2011, which is a good performance from Rovers, with Barrow being a good side in Women's Super League 2. York beat Lee 54-0. The two, and Saints beat Warrington 38-4, but the two headline scores are London beating Castleford 40 points to 4, which I guess isn't necessarily a massive surprise in terms of where Cass are now. But Cardiff beating Featherstone 36-18. They're in the quarterfinals. I hope they get a good draw in the quarters. I don't know how the draw works, whether the top teams are seeded and the second teams in the draw are not seeded, but that'd be interesting. I'd like to see them up against a Saints or a Leeds or they've already played.
It's a great story.
I'd like to see how they go. I don't expect they would win those games, but I'd like to see how they go.
Might be the regeneration of rugby league in Wales is through Cardiff women.
England Wales would be a great.
And there's a
to
junior
push.
programme there, so maybe it isn't, lamenting the loss of West Wales Raiders, but celebrating Cardiff women.
Yeah, they've gone, haven't they? Oh, forgot about them. Speaking of our tentacles, yeah, exactly. London Roosters beat Halifax, the champions Halifax. I was going to get Rob on again this round, but I think not every time. 66-22.
Great win. Great win.
Wigan beat
Big
Warrington.
win.
158-18.
That was a big win.
That was a big win. Leeds beat Hull. I don't know what the score is.
78-22.
There you go. So,
But more importantly, from a development point of view of the sport, the Leeds development team made their debut. Also at Hull. And next week, Wigan and Leeds are playing development teams and then first teams. So York played, didn't they, their first wheelchair
Yeah, beat Wakefield, yeah.
game?
Everyone beats Wakefield.
Oh, I didn't want to mention that. But
I think it's only our PDRL team that's any good. So
hang on to it.
yeah. Before we get onto the match, the World Cup, which of course last week we didn't know where it was going, but now it could be going to Fiji, or it could be going to New Zealand, or it could be going to Qatar.
We were right,
So
almost.
there you go.
I said 2029, but it's 2025 in Qatar.
How prescient you were.
You know, if the World Cup goes to Qatar, do they like women's sport out there? I don't know.
Word on the street, I don't know which street,
Yeah.
is that New Zealand and the Pacific is the only real bit.
Oh, you
shock,
mean
shock horror.
I don't know how to break it to you.
You mean that bit from
I don't
North
know
Korea
how
that
to
I
break
haven't-
it to you.
I haven't even tagged the International Rugby League on the
No,
tweet yet.
I think there has been an expression of interest from Qatar, but it's nothing more than that. And you would.
I might express interest to host it in my back garden.
How many can you get round the fence?
Is the pitch
Is
bigger
it
than
another
Bradford's?
Vesta care?
Oh dear.
But I know, and why wouldn't they want to be linked with world events? Because they've got the stadium. But you know, if you were to say, there's a lot of reasons why it wouldn't work. One of which is we don't play rugby league in that area, so there's no legacy. But has anybody told them it's 3 World Cups, which
Well,
includes
yes.
women
Four.
and wheelchair?
4 PDRL World Cup. Okay, remembering this. But you're right, and we can't go backwards after that
No.
World Cup.
Although
can't-
they are talking about having less men's teams if it's less time and more expensive.
Yeah, I think it talked about it was the French government that required equality, so each competition had the same number of teams.
Yeah.
So they're clearly not going to have 16 wheelchair teams. They're not going to have 16 women's teams, are they?
No. And they might have 12 men's teams instead of 16, in which case you'd have to have a more robust qualifying period. And we haven't got really time to organise a lot of that. The other interesting thing that's emerged is what do you do with France? Because clearly as hosts they were guaranteed a place, but they didn't make the quarter-finals. That's thrown another spanner in the works.
What's happening with the European Championship in the...
Well, again, that's part of the World Cup
Yeah.
qualifiers, so I think it's all going to be on hold.
Yeah.
Because you can't
It's like
finance
drawing
it without
everything.
knowing that the money's
There was
there.
talk in that press statement from the IRL that France are touring down under next year, which I thought was interesting.
Who's paying for
Presumably
that?
paying some of the Pacific nations. I guess.
Yes, you would think that would be
Yeah.
PNG,
Yeah.
Tonga.
Probably not
Maybe.
Tonga.
No,
Cook
maybe,
Islands.
sorry, Fiji maybe, who want to host the World
Yeah.
Cup, but they've got to prove that their infrastructure's up to it.
Well, I think is it APA? Is it? Yeah, APA. I'm presuming that's Fiji. My knowledge of that part of the world is almost
Is that the one
non-existent.
place you haven't refereed?
Yeah. I think they said it was a 12,000 capacity stadium. So I think beyond a pool game or two, that's about all they
Yeah,
would
them
get.
playing at home in their pool
Yeah.
fixtures will be fantastic.
Yeah.
It's also about broadcast quality from those places as well, because you'd want a deal and you couldn't say, oh, there's games being played but we can't get pictures back to you.
Sounds like it's going to be more New Zealand than
New
any
Zealand
involvement
wants
from
it, but
Australia,
again,
is
New
it?
Zealand are not cash rich as a rugby league playing nation, so it's bringing all the other parties together to make sure it's viable. But I think not only are they the front runners, but they are putting plans together.
And it's
And
whether-
Qatar was a great headline,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure it's going to happen.
No, it was whether it also gets pushed on a year to 2026.
I think they want to keep it 25 because they've got the.
It's a
Although it
blackish
hasn't
year,
been
isn't it?
announced yet,
No.
there are games planned for 24 international
Well,
games.
there is a plan.
They're planned.
What about 2026?
How ironic, again, and isn't this rugby league at its finest, that at the same time we're cancelling the World Cup and wondering where our international game is going to be played and what relevance it has, the NRL are in Las Vegas telling us that they're going to play in America when we have no plan for how to crack the American market. We're not really bothered about your World Cup, but we can get some betting cash out of Sin
presumably
City.
it's about selling TV subscriptions, is it? To
I
Joel
think-
Kane's still there, isn't he?
broadcast rights.
I think it's just money. But they're talking about maybe a 5-year deal so that every club gets the chance to play over there.
I like how the NFL teams come to Wembley and every team will apart from
But it tells you everything about our sport, isn't it? That it's more important to get Australian club sides playing in America than it is.
Bring back the World Club Championship.
It had some faults, but
what
The cricket
the
scores.
English teams.
it had some. But
Yeah.
it wasn't as bad as was made out.
It was interesting. I remember going to some games.
London had a fantastic experience out.
Did we ask Craig Murdoch about that? Was that on the podcast or off the podcast? I can't remember now. When we were in Hull. So I can't remember. Next time he's on, because we're getting back on. We're getting back on. The insinuations that the commentary team for the whole for the Halifax St Helens team biased towards St Helens because Kyle Amor and Jodie Cunningham was on it, but Craig Murdoch's not. He played for Wigan.
Yeah, he wouldn't have wanted it.
This weekend Super League games: Hull Care Wigan on Thursday, which no doubt there'll be loads of
That'd
stuff.
be a good game.
Yeah,
Because
better
again,
than Wakefield Hull FC.
that is a team with great ambition playing really well at the moment against a side that if they knock them off, they played them in the first game of the season, didn't they? Round one, it was Hull Care Wigan.
Yeah.
Hull
No,
Care-
on the time, yeah,
Hull
because
Care
it was when the thing was, wasn't it? Yeah,
which
the
again,
local challenge.
stupid loot fixtures.
Catalans Wakefield on Friday, Huddersfield Cast, Leeds Saints with Kevin Sinfield, and he's not playing, he's just selling books. Lee versus Warrington. I've read a bit of his book downstairs. It's interesting. It feels like...
You'd hope it would be.
Like I said last week, when you mentioned about it inspiring and stuff, and it does read that. It reminds me a bit, although it's a long time since I've read it, of Wayne Bennett's book, which I thought was very good in terms of that kind of, not motivational kind of stuff, but I read it at the right time. Lee Warrington, and then on Sunday...
Lee Warrington will be a good game.
I think that's going to be a cracking game. That it's a shame that that's not on an extra game on TV. I know this because the Salford Hull game
is the extra game.
Is
yes.
the game on our league, isn't it? I believe. But
and also a shame that we've got another 4 games on at the same time.
well, it's just ridiculous.
And one of them is a game that you've just highlighted. Well, actually, we quite might want to watch that.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game. That because I think it ended up being, from memory, I think it wasn't that close when they played each other earlier on in this year. I might be wrong.
Think that
I only know
didn't
what's in the
Leeds
paper in
start
front of
very well and were ahead at half time and Warrington reeled them in the second half.
I
I think Lee got off to a great start at Halliwell Jones.
just think it. I think
But that's a game you'd want to see. If that was on Saturday, Salford Hull Sunday
Yes.
Sunday,
on
yeah.
our league.
Yeah.
So there is a space on the Saturday.
Yeah.
And I know it's the home fans will go, no, come on, we knew that was a Saturday night when we bought our season ticket. But if you put that game on our league as well on Saturday afternoon, I think I'd pay a £5 to watch that.
We did that great thing again on Saturday where we've got Leeds Wigan on BBC One, and we competed with ourselves in our league with some tag rugby, which I know no one's going to watch it or whatever unless you minutes with someone playing. But
why put it on?
Well, there's another question.
There's a cost.
There's a
isn't
cost
there?
to putting it on, so why put it on? I don't know. Maybe there's a bigger.
Maybe
piece in
that's
there.
why they're only 7,000 ahead, because we were all watching the tug rugby on our league.
Richard has got a copy of the Martin Calder book today. Is it a rare unsigned one? This comes from Terry Crook, the legendary Wakefield player and commentator. You can't find a copy of his testimonial brochure not signed by Terry Crook. I think I've got about 3 of them.
How many were published?
I don't know. I've got about
You might
3
have
of
the
them.
only 3 that were published. What a lovely man.
He is, yes, one of the great players who's turned commentator and is able to do it. I'm puzzled by. I know we've nicked it from Australia, and I need to write about this more. But when you employ journalists on the telly, you give post-match interviews to players to do. I don't understand the reasoning for it, but it's not to say they're not good or bad or whatever. I just don't understand why you employ a Damien Johnson or a Tony Arnold and then get John Wilkin to interview someone. It just doesn't make any
Having
sense.
said that, Damien Johnson's opening question, I think, was, I can't remember which coach it was now, pick the bones out of that performance for me, which is, I mean, it's an easy opening question. I don't think you really need that much training to ask that question. That would be what I would say. And that's no disrespect to Damien Johnson, by the way.
He's a fine broadcaster.
Absolutely, no, but you have to ask an open question.
Yeah.
And he asked an open question.
Yeah. That's what you're trying to do.
I mean, it's a more. It's
I'm trying to just put an argument back to you about players that I actually think players can do it.
I spent.
Although I don't get what they do. The bit I don't quite get is the roving round the field as though
Before
that adds no,
But
even
no one
afterwards.
likes it. No one likes
And
it.
John Wilkin turning his back to the camera to then grab a player. I don't think that adds anything to the broadcast.
Well, that's why Harry Smith told him he'd given him a bollocking, so he didn't have to do it again.
Go get a player, and then once you got the player, then bring the camera to you. That to me, that's the way to do it.
I blame Channel 4. Danny couldn't on the telly this week. What's that?
She must have been on somebody's telly.
Probably. Not on eBay though, because my eBay obviously the spies in my phone
Sorry?
on
Right.
eBay. Right? You won't have seen this because you don't follow our Twitter all the time, but my eBay account was saying, come buy these signed photos of England Women's Rugby League players. I'm like, no. But when you search for Danica Prim, nothing. Not near
Well,
a
she
sock.
probably played before the day.
Not even a sock of photos. It's the summer bash this week, and for the first time I'm not
In
going.
spring?
Well, yes.
Are you going
No.
to York?
No.
Lovely York.
We've now reached the point.
Has it had any publicity at all?
I forgot it was the summer bash until I looked at the fixtures this week and I thought, hang on a minute, why are the games on Saturday? And I thought, must be the bash. So,
It used to have a selling point of being in Blackpool.
is that a selling point?
It is, because I could
You're not
con my
working for
wife
the
into
Blackpool
going
Tourist
to
Board.
No, I could con my wife to say, let's go to Blackpool for the weekend. I'll go do some work. You can do whatever you do in Blackpool.
Let's eat candy floss.
Spend
Although, if
2
you offered
pennies.
me York or Blackpool for a weekend,
Well-
I would definitely pick York.
But you're cultured, right? You're not the typical rugby league
No,
fan.
I'm not.
But I'm here to represent the typical rugby league fan. Who's like, hats, ice cream, burgers, beer.
Yeah.
The
Well,
Scarborough
beer.
pub.
There's some fabulous restaurants in York now. So,
And
yeah,
there might be in
it's-
Blackpool, but there's the £1 burger
Yeah.
man as well, which is just around the corner
There are.
from the ground. But
We did a very nice library event in Blackpool once
did you?
with Dave Hadfield, who is a local celebrity
Oh, cool.
at Blackpool, and that was wonderful.
Are they going to be on our post World Cup tour?
I don't
If
think
you're Blackpool, if you
I
want
don't
to
think
go
they're
to Blackpool.
putting in a bid.
Oh. But when it was in Blackpool, you could go and you could go to the game. I've said this all before. Go to the game, go to the front. Don't do this. Go do that.
Well, the thing is, even Magic, it's a tough watch for a spectator to watch 3 games. So you need to be able to go out of the stadium and
You got 4 games on the Saturday at York.
do something.
4 on the Sunday as well, because there's a Women's Super League game
Oh,
as well that
right.
isn't on the back
Yeah.
page. So yeah, there's.
So you do need to be in an
8
environment where you can go on the pleasure beach and make yourself sick and then come back and watch.
Is
it.
there a cinema at that retail park? I think
Yeah.
I'd probably end up at the
Yeah,
cinema.
swimming pool.
Swimming pool,
Swimming-
library, bowling
Oh,
alley, arcade. So yeah, it's kind of like Blackpool for the. I want to say middle class. I don't know.
I actually think
Well-
it might be quite a good venue. It's just I don't think the public are going to get behind it. I don't know
Well,
why.
and as a stadium, it's great.
Yeah,
right?
it is a great
Yeah.
stadium.
So
And
it's-
it's a nice size for the venue.
But
so-
even Viaplay are only now featuring 2 of the games, which I think
Are
tells
they?
you. Yeah.
So the
Norm-
concept's dead.
Normally we would have every game, and they picked was it 2 games on
It's
the
London,
Saturday.
Toulouse, and Featherstone.
Yeah.
York.
So they're not
3
even
games.
there on the Sunday.
So in the first year, I think every game was on Sky, and for the
Yeah.
first few years, and then there was one year where they couldn't have one game because there was a Super League game on.
But if
I
you're going to
can't
pick,
watch
if
it
you're going to pick 2 games, you're going to pick Halifax, Batley, Bradford, Keighley. I would say.
They've not picked that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something else on Sunday on Viaplay. I don't
London,
know.
Toulouse.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd pick that over those 2 games I'd mentioned.
But if you're showing those 2, why don't you show the other 2 on the day as well? Because you're already there. You've already got the camera set up.
Well, unless the Swedish Speedway
Yeah,
at the
well, it
same
could
time.
be. But we've gone from every game being on Sky, which chances are, if you're a rugby league fan who's got a TV package, you've probably got Sky Sports. If you haven't got a TV package, you haven't got any of them, so it doesn't matter. But if you're a rugby league fan who's got Sky Sports and you're not a fan of the Championship, you might not have Viaplay because you're thinking, I can miss my game on the Challenge Cup because, So no one's going to catch these games who aren't already subscribing to Viaplay and a Championship fan. So if we're doing an hour league game on Sunday, why don't we do the hour league games from the Bash on the Sunday instead? Why don't we put those on our league?
The 2.
Absolutely.
And again, it's easy for me to come out and say, well, we should go to Blackpool, we should do this, because I don't have to make the financial decisions. But the Bash has kind of gone down year on year in terms of what's the point of it. And there was never a point to it anyway, because it was a sop to Championship clubs because the Magic Weekend existed.
Well, I think the other thing is you need to look at the players in all of this. That the players still like going to Newcastle because it's a stadium that they won't play at maybe once in their career, and they turn up and it's Premier League standard and fantastic. You're going to York where you're going to be playing this year anyway. It's not special.
It's the Northern Rail Cup moving
It's
from
not
Blackpool to
special.
Halifax.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we play there anyway. So.
But no, I haven't seen much publicity about it. I don't think it's going to be.
But just jumping on to Magic Weekend, didn't I read about there being a sort of a clubs revolting against IMG?
It's coming back.
Yeah, that it's not going to be scrapped any longer.
I think the story more behind that is IMG haven't come up with what the alternative would be, and whilst we don't know what that alternative is, because they were going to say get rid of Magic Weekend and we will have another event in its place. And while the clubs haven't been told what that event is and how much money they may make out of it, they want another Magic Weekend. Although again, I suspect that the crowd's going to be tough at Magic Weekend because we don't get enough buy-in from people in the North East.
Surely, if you plan to take something out, you have a plan in place to either replace it, change it, whatever it may be. I thought that was to do with the cup and those double, the
was it going to be a quarterfinals
fixtures
of the cup in one venue or something? Or I don't want to say nines because
my point in the question there was going back to the Bash was that this was supposed to be the last year of the Bash, wasn't it? So
yeah, I think this will because if it doesn't prove to be a success at any level, and it skews the table, doesn't it?
It does, but then we go back to the NRL argument I had earlier on, where that table is completely skewed because I don't even know how many games they play, but they certainly don't play each other twice, and I don't even know how they ride up
pay
those.
everybody twice. Yeah. But I think again there is only one round in the Championship that is this extra round, so when you are talking about potential to be promoted for the last time this year, potential to make the playoffs, possibly being relegated at a time when you might not come back if you get relegated to the level that you were at. This one round could actually be far more significant, and is it necessary?
It could, and I don't know on what basis the fixtures were chosen.
No, exactly.
Is it, Magic is based on league positions, isn't it? I don't know if it's the same for the Championship because I suspect probably not because they've in effect got derby fixtures, haven't they?
Yeah,
We used against Barrow.
We used to get Dewsbury battling
every year. Yeah.
And then, or you'd get a Bradford versus Hull KR because you knew you were guaranteed a crowd and win this lead the next day.
I think wherever they can have a derby, they have.
Yeah.
That famous derby fixture, Newcastle against Sheffield.
Both screwed over.
Which is a shame it's not Featherstone against Sheffield.
It's the unmerged clubs.
Yeah. It's Hull versus Huddersfield. It just seems
no
to
one's
be
going to Bash.
But not only that, but did anybody know Bash was on this weekend? And the other thing is, if you're serious about Bash, and I know you can't do this all the time, it has to be the only show in town, but it's on at the same time as...
We're asking people to pay a fiver to watch Salford versus Lepson.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's only, a 12,000 capacity stadium, I think?
I think it's 8.
Is it even just
I think it's 8. I can't remember.
It should be pretty full,
Headingley wasn't busy last year, was it?
No.
You went on the Saturday, I went on the Sunday, and I left early so I could watch the Lionesses with Euro 2000, whatever it was.
But I guess it's not a season ticket fixture, is it? No. So again, you're relying on, going back to the cup argument, you're relying on people to pay through the gate, aren't you?
Plus transport, plus...
Yeah. Plus the coffees are really expensive at that retail park. It's not like Blackpool. It's no £1 burger vans. It's $6.50 for a macchiato in Europe.
So they need to start selling Kiss Me Quick hats and
donkeys round the side of the pitch. Lights, a lot of lights.
I was thinking about going this year, but
you'll be going to the illumination.
Dewsbury, the town, always had this thing. I don't know if they still have it. They had it Dewsbury by the sea.
Oh, we have one in Willows in Wakefield.
So they just need to put a sandpit in the corner and bring a donkey in and market it as Blackpool, York by the sea.
Yeah.
Bash Kiss Me Quick hats.
Yeah. I was getting confused then because they've got the World Coal Carrying Championships, haven't they? Just up the road. Is it
Gawthorpe. Yeah.
But I was getting confused with the staple of trans world sport, the World Wife Carrying Championships, which doesn't happen in Gawthorpe. I don't think.
Don't go there.
I've done have the Summer Bash entertainment where someone dresses in a donkey suit and jumps over things like that.
Wearing a Kiss Me Quick hat.
Yeah.
Eating
I think
camouflage.
the man of the match, because this is the days of, got a giant stick of rock at Blackpool.
We used to get cake in the press room.
There was lovely cake at Blackpool, yeah.
Not that that's a consideration.
To be serious for a second, again, if I was a Championship fan, I'd be definitely going to Bash because you're getting value for money. Because you will, I would watch more than one game. I wouldn't watch 4.
Yeah.
But I'd watch at least 2. And
York
probably
is accessible.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it's had any promotion.
But if you're a Halifax or a Batley fan, I'd definitely be keen to watch the Bradford-Keighley game, at least the first half of it, and maybe the back end of the Newcastle-Sheffield game, maybe. But
if you're a Halifax fan, you definitely want to watch the Bradford game.
But what do we promote? All we're promoting there is see some rugby. There's nothing else apart from here's a lot of rugby in a weekend.
Well, I don't know if around the ground, because again, it's sort of council owned and it's a retail park, and you could put a fan zone, but I haven't heard what else is going on apart from.
But again, are the RFL going to invest in it?
No.
When they're
Because-
when the intention is to get rid of it. So
Exactly.
no.
And that diminished at
No.
Blackpool year on year as well. It started with a bit of a fan zone, and then it was Steve Maskell who flung some shirts, which it's probably got some
Merch. Yeah.
stash. Get some. If you are missing the summer bash, you know that if there are t-shirts, Steve will be selling them off afterwards, along with the programme stuff. I'm sad to be missing it, but also I can't be bothered.
I think it's just crept up a bit.
Yeah, I'd rather go to Leeds on Friday, see 2 games, get to wave at Kevin Smith off the telly, and I'm going to see 2. Should see 2 very good games there. I don't know. I think we've destroyed the summer bash. People are going to be upset.
I think we're just realistic.
Yeah, that's what we do, isn't it? So what are we going to do next week? 'Cause it's bank holiday.
Oh, probably. The weather's beautiful. We'll go and drink a parasol.
There's
in
no
the
excuse
garden
not to go to the
somewhere.
summer bash. Is there any rugby league on Monday?
No, that's the other thing.
No.
We've got another bank holiday, but no rugby league. It would have been Lee Warrington on bank holiday Monday.
And obviously the bash is all in one venue, but that's it. Well, we don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Great Professor Collins. So I presume we haven't got a show next Monday.
Well, I don't know. I mean, no, not on Tuesday, no, because taking the shilling of actually working. But we might be back next week. If not, then the week after, which will be post
Magic.
Post Magic, which I'm also not going to. And just because not that I don't want to. Well, I mean, hey, my team's going to lose, so that's one reason not to go. But I've been to Newcastle.
Doesn't matter who they were playing.
No, playing in the bash we'd lose. I've been to the Magic. I've been to Newcastle loads of times now, so it's kind of lost that.
Again, it's
Must
like
go
everything. You have
thing.
to have a crowd. There has to be an atmosphere. And clubs will sell a certain amount of tickets, and there'll be passion and fervour. But in a big 53,000 capacity stadium, you have to have quite a lot of people for it to work. And the worry is that there hasn't been significant buy-in from the people of the North East, because the football season has ended the week before.
And they've had a good season. this
Newcastle
year.
United have had a great season. And
But nothing's changed there, hasn't it? Always been
No.
like after the football season's finished. Well,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
different was it last year? Was it the
it
end
was
of the season?
It was earlier, wasn't it?
I've lost track.
But it's almost like
We had it, but we had Magic when it was almost in September, didn't we?
Yeah, that was that the year after COVID?
And we've had Magic to start the season as well
Of course.
in Wales, first week.
Jordan Tansey.
Yeah, that's when I
Kevin
gave a
Smith.
record 37 penalties, I think. Castleford Wakefield game. You
In the
won't
first
remember that
half.
one. Yeah, oh dear. He probably gave more penalties than points. Yeah.
But nobody remembers any of the game other than the very last one and how it ended.
Is that, have you read the book?
Yeah.
Is that
Some of it.
mentioned? Is that mentioned? Oh, good, because that's what people want to know. See,
I
you do
think
it on
so.
purpose.
Yes.
I was
No,
on the line for
people
that game. What people forget about that game was how good the game was.
We're not
it
interested in
that.
was.
It was a cracking game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was overshadowed by what happened at the end.
Yes. No, it might be Gareth Ellis that mentions it in a book that he's got coming out.
I'll be at the Magic weekend.
Good.
Yeah. Part of the Rugby League Cares programme for retired players, which includes match officials.
Excellent.
They have an event on at Magic Weekend for retired players to come together and socialise really, and thank them for their involvement in the sport, and for them to sort of network with each other a little bit around their experiences of retirement from the game and what they're doing post retirement. The Rugby League Cares programme is really good for retired players, and as I said, they've included match officials in as part of that programme. So they're doing some really good work there. So
Good.
I shall be there on the Saturday.
It's not a bad thing. It's just I've been to another. I don't really want to go to another.
I did bump into a fan once at Magic, who, when I was on my way back to the car park, started unzipping his coat, and I thought, oh no, what's coming here? And as he unzipped his coat, he had a picture of my face on this T-shirt, and it said, "Help stamp out child abuse."
Oh,
Incredible.
there you go.
And
No wonder you're going back.
on that bombshell. We'll be back in the future. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the bash and/or Magic Weekend and/or whatever rugby league you're going to this week. Is there anything we need to promote apart from Martin Callan's book and
Kevin Sinfield's signing the book.
Kevin Sinfield's got a book out. I don't know if you've seen it. He's that fella. He did all the running.
Published by Penguin.
Penguin the Biscuit people, and he's going to be at Headingley on Friday night. If you're going to the game,
5
whether you're
o'clock,
Leeds or St
5 till
Helens,
7.
5 o'clock in the long bar.
In the long bar.
Will it be signposted so people can find it?
Yes.
I'll stand there with a big sign saying "Kev this way."
Yeah.
And you can meet the
Great
man
man.
himself and get your book signed and put it on eBay. No, don't. Read it first. And so there, that's this. And if you're a Saints fan, you can get it. 'Cause Saints fans like him, don't they?
Mm.
Everyone likes him. Everyone likes him now.
Because he beat them in a few grand finals, I'll forgive him.
Phil's eating his biscuit. We're going to go. We'll see you